Hello, I'm Kitsimi, and this is my submission for the Gear Gods Gear Mortals 2 contest. I'm going to be going over my recording rig, although it's not going to be like most rigged videos as I don't have much hardware, I just can't afford it, but as limitations breed creativity, I found ways to get creative with mixing in the box, and I hope to share some of my process and how I get semi-professionally sounding results in guitar, bass, drums, with mostly free, stock, or cheap plugins. I hope that this is informative, I hope you learned something, and most importantly, I hope you enjoy. But first, a prayer to the Gear God. Let's dive right in. Alright, so let's start with talking about the instruments I'm going to be using for this video. I have a little demo written out for this, and for it, I used my Ibanez RG8. This is one of my oldest guitars, actually, and I had it with lace aluminum pickups in it. They're pretty cool. I installed a brass nut up top, and I use a groove wrap just on like the headstock there to eliminate any possible string buzzing above the neck there. And then for the bass, I am borrowing my friend's Ibanez TMB 100. This thing sounds great. My friend goes by Friends Without Faces. You should check her out. She makes really cool music. And that is all I'm actually going to be using for this demo, but on other projects, I have this knockoff Strandberg. This is by a company called NK Guitars. I actually got this off eBay for like 250 bucks, and I didn't expect too much out of it, quality-wise, but I gotta say it surprised me a little bit. The only real complaint I have is that the fretwork is a little bit wonky, but otherwise it works fine. Sounds really good, actually. Came with active pickups, and it sounds great, actually. I'm really happy with it. Someday, you know, I'm sure I'll be able to get a real Strandberg, but that day has not come yet. We'll get there, though. So, let's get right into this demo. Alright, so let's get into the actual rig for this video, rig inside the box. So for the guitars, I am running into my interface, into my DAW, and then it goes through EQ into a gate, and then it goes into the TSB1 or the ProFet overdrive Sims. From there it goes into the Lapel Legion plugin, which is amazing. If you don't use it, you should be using Lapel's plugins. They're better than most paid amp sims, I'd say. From there, it's going to run into Nadir or NADIR using ML Sound Labs. Best free IR in the world is what they call it. It's pretty good, actually. I really like it. And then from there, it's going to go into FabFilter Pro Q3. That is the guitar. And then for the bass, I am running gate compressor into FabFilter Saturn, again into Nadir, and then into just some compression, EQ, all that. For the drums, I am using Get Good Drums, the Invasion. Really good, actually. Got it when it was on sale, and I haven't used anything else since. Only thing is I haven't figured out how to do multi-outs from Kontakt Player because I don't own Kontakt 5 yet. I actually don't know if that's possible, and I haven't seen anybody really talk about how to do it, so I've had to settle for just bus processing, bus EQ, bus compression, but even then it still sounds amazing. All the samples are already just really, really nice and tight the way they are, so I just have to do some tweaking inside the actual plugin with levels and stuff, and I can get a really good sound out of it. So let's take a look as to what this sounds like. Cool. Okay, so let's go and dissect what I did a little bit. So we'll start with the guitars here. So you can see my chain here, the guitar goes directly into an EQ, and I really like to do that because you can change how the actual pickups of your guitar reacts if you find, like, no matter what plug-in or what you do to your guitar system after it's been amped, if you aren't happy with the tone, you can do a little bit of tweaking beforehand and save yourself some headache and like post-processing and whatever. So for instance, I'm using an 8-string in this particular demo. And it tends to have a very muddy low end to it, so I like to take out everything below like 45 hertz because it's not really necessary. I make sure never to cut out the fundamental, but anything below that you can kind of disregard, and it saves some headroom because lower frequencies are by nature going to be more powerful than your high frequencies, and so they'll take up more headroom. And if you cut those out before it even goes into any like gain staging, saves you a lot of headache later on. I took out some low mids here, take out some mud, and then boost a little bit around the 1K 950 hertz area because I'm a Gen kid. That's where Gen is, you know. So that's really it. It's very subtle, only a few dBs gain or cut. You know, you don't want to like cause any phase issues early on. So just very like paint with broad strokes in that stage. I am a big fan of these two Stompbox Sims. They are just so cool. The TSB1 is great. I really love the sweep functionality on it and the fact that you get like an extra boost stage. For both of these, I do pretty much the same thing where I don't have any gain, but I do have the volume and the tone all the way up. That's because I'm not really looking to get a ton of like hard saturation out of the pedal stage. I want my amp to do that, but I do like how it colors the sound. I mean, you're always going to get a little bit of distortion out of it because it's going to be, you know, the color comes from how it's going to clip your signal, you know, regardless. I just don't want it to, you know, get really just disgusting. I don't want to lose clarity out of it is really, you know, what it boils down to. The TSB1 sounds like your pretty standard, like, you know, Tube Screamer plugin, but the Prophet one here, Prophet, has a really different sound, and I assume that's because it's modeled out of like a FET style circuit. We can take a listen as to how they sound. I can A/B these real quick. So this is with the TSB1. And then the Prophet. So I find the Prophet has a really nice like harmonic richness to it, but it can be a little bit brittle, kind of thin sounding, and it tends to not do much to your low end. So it almost sounds like it's like a multi-band distortion and it's leaving your low end alone, which is nice in some cases, but not really what I am always looking for. But it does tend to give kind of an almost like almost like a single coil kind of sound sometimes. It's kind of like you have like you push pull pot on when you're using it. And I know that's a weird comparison, but I mean, that's how I interpret it anyway. So for the amp sim, I'm using Powlin Legion. The Powlin LePow plugins are amazing. I've been tone searching for forever trying to find, you know, what suits my style of playing and the tone I'm chasing. I've tried everything from like, I used Podfarm for a long time. I tried Helix Native. I tried all the Neural DSP plugins. Neural DSP plugins are amazing, but the only thing is that they're a bit of a CPU hog. So if you want multiple guitar tracks without freezing them, I could run that. And I have a new computer too. I'm running an i7 and it still can't keep up. But the LePow plugins are phenomenal. Like I think I'm totally sold on using them for the rest of forever until I get some actual, you know, amps and pedals and stuff like that. So I have this on the red channel. I have the input left alone, rhythm, tone stack on. Admittedly, I don't know what that actually does, but I like how it sounds. So I'm gonna, you know, do that. Brought the gain down a little bit past noon. Lows boosted, mids almost all the way up, highs like 3/4 of the way up. Contour, just kind of dialed that into taste to around probably like wherever it contours, like 1 or 2K. Presence boosted a little bit, volume left alone. Run everything in stereo so that I can run my double tracked guitars through it. high quality. And all that is running into Nadir. NetIR here is an IR loader. It's really, really nice. I have them both on ML Sound Lab's best IR in the world, it's called. But what I do for guitars a lot of the time is I'll always high pass them a little bit, but I'll high pass the left and the right a little bit differently. So for this one, you can see I have the left at 115 hertz and I have the right at 123 hertz. And the slight difference there, the slight like phase difference too, gives you like a perceived like wider stereo image, I found. And I really like that. I really like a wide guitar tone, but I don't like using stereo enhancers on it too drastically because, you know, it can pretty easily get out of phase and whatever. But having them EQ differently, it's almost like mid-side processing, but it's purely, you know, left and right processing, can make a world of difference in the, you know, stereo image without having to risk your phase. I've been really chasing Reflection's newest album, Willow. The tone on that is probably one of the biggest guitar tones I've ever heard. I don't know how they do that. I'd love to talk to them one day about how they mix that album because that's so good. That and Perfect War Forever by Glass Cloud have two of the best like 8-string tones I've ever heard in my life. All that runs into FabFilter Pro Q3. Pro Q is not free. Or stock, but it's heavily worth the investment. I mean, this is one of the best EQs ever. You can see I have some pretty drastic moves on here, nothing too crazy, but I mean, it's, you know, not subtle by any means. I have it high passed here at about 19. I could have gone further, but I really wanted to preserve the low end. I have a lot of these moves made dynamic because it almost acts like a multiband compressor, but you have a little bit more freedom as to how it reacts, and I'm really about that. So I boosted some of the low end here. The higher lows here, I really like. They have a little more thump to them, and then I took out some of the low med, some of the muddiness there, boosted around the 1K again, coming down, you know, into a slope, and then I'm taking out some of the like really high treble. I wanted to keep some of the like presence area alive, and I didn't want to totally cut out the high end, so I made that dynamic. So, you know, it's there, but it's tamed, you know, because, you know, take out too much of the high end and your guitars sound just lifeless, but too much of it and they sound brittle, harsh, or thin. So, and then I did a little bit of low pass here. This didn't really do anything because it's at like 21K and the human range of hearing only goes to 22 anyway. I just, you know, it makes me feel good when I do that, so I do it. So that's what the guitars are running. As for the bass, I have a gate running into a compressor, running into FabFilter Saturn. FabFilter Saturn is really cool. It's a multi-band distortion, so you can actually choose what frequency range of your signal is getting distorted, and that's really important for bass if you're trying to get a modern metal bass tone. Leave the low end pretty well alone, maybe give it a little bit of saturation, but nothing that you would actually want to like really clip it with. And then the highs you can go absolutely insane on, which is what I did. You can see I have the heavy saturation turned all the way up, and I have it on like full dynamics, so that way it's like really only distorting relative to the transients going into it, and it's not just this like wall of noise that you can kind of see visualized on the other side of it. And then from there, that's running into another compressor, and that's running into an EQ. So I'll walk through the bass chain here. Let's just solo that. Should probably turn that on. Cool. So that's what it sounds like wet. This is what it sounds like dry. Sounds really ugly. I actually don't mind the bass clipping at the input stage. I actually, I wouldn't do that if I wasn't gonna distort the bass. If it was meant to be a cleaner bass tone, I'd totally put it into a padded input and try to bring the input gain down a little bit. But for this, I actually really liked how the clipped bass sound reacted with Saturn. So I'll start turning stuff on, gate and compressor. Just tame the transients a little bit, Saturn on. That's super ugly. I should mention that for the IR cab sim for this, I'm using it's Panda Cabs had a free base pack, or just free cab pack in general with base IRs in it, and it had this one under a folder called Dark Glass Tones, and then the IR is called Satan Tone. Really nice, really just thick, like you'll hear. Okay, I can't type in 0 myself, so I'll have to just bring that back down by hand. Really like how that sounds. Into a compressor. And then finally back into another EQ. Sounds really mean. This is what it sounds like with the guitars, and then I'll just start taking stuff out. I'll have to turn the guitars on. Bass off. On. So yeah, that's the basic guitar and bass rig, and then for drums, pretty much all I'm doing is a little bit of EQ before a compressor to, you know, kind of like change how the compressor reacts to individual frequencies, kind of like how you would change the EQ before a guitar goes into an amp. You can change the EQ of drums or anything going into a compressor. And it'll like ultimately change how that compressor reacts to, you know, what frequencies are fed into it. So if you find something, if you get a really if you have a lot of low ends going into your compressor and you find it's ducking everything else down, you can cut some of that low end before it goes into the compressor, and it'll sound a lot more natural. It won't have to duck everything down as much to make room for that low end. So this is what the drums sound like dry. Can't even really hear those because I don't have that track on. Okay, and then EQ and compressor. And then finally another compressor and another EQ. So these are the settings. This is the EQ going into this compressor. Taking 23 at 5.5 with a 30 millisecond and a 350 millisecond release. Another compressor, a lot more drastic. This is the, you know, really smishing it. This is really just slamming it. And then finally another EQ with kind of a weird smiley face setting. And all that is going into Maximus, which comes with FL Studio, and it's a mastering plugin. I don't have much going on here because, you know, I don't really want to brick wall my mixes. I like to have some dynamics in there. So yeah, that is my rig. I hope you learned something out of it, and I hope you enjoy. If anything, key takeaways are try out the Lapel plugins, try out FabFilter Saturn, try EQing your guitars before it goes into anything else in your signal path. And that's everything. I'm Kitsumi. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something.